Hello and welcome once again to The Blueprints. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, with new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We ask that you like, comment, subscribe, share this program. Of course, as always, if you can't listen or watch it in its entirety right this second, download it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, you name it. It is out there. Another great show lined up for you today. We're talking about Remembrance Day. We're talking about veterans. We're talking about military procurement, all of the above and much more, because of course Friday is Remembrance Day, and remember all those that served, fought for our freedom, either in conflict or at home or abroad. We want to remember those that put it all on the line for us. So to bring on a very special guest, a guy who's come on before, talked to us before, good friend of the show, James Bezan, Member of Parliament for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman in the beautiful province of Manitoba, also the defense critic. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me back on the show.
All right, so of course our veterans are all the focus this week. It's a very important week, a week that Canadians remember those who have served, who put their lives on the line for the country and for what we believe in as a country.
This is a great opportunity for us to remember that sacrifice, honor those that have served, and thank those that are currently serving. Protect us here at home and protect those around the world who can't protect themselves, and project Canadian values and interests on the international level. You know, we this week, or we got today is Indigenous Veterans Day. You know, we have had, you know, just past weekend veteran suppers, and they're going on all week right up until Remembrance Day. And it is a way for us to show our appreciation for those that have served. And it's also time to talk about, you know, the specific battles that they've been in, and the effects of those battles, including our modern day veterans who serve in places like Iraq and Afghanistan and Bosnia, and knowing that often they've come back with physical injury as well as those that we can't see.
Yeah, absolutely, and the toll, I think, is something, especially if it's a mental health issue or the post-traumatic stress disorder, stuff you don't see right off the bat. It's not kind of visible. You hear about it after the fact, and that's something I think the government has definitely a responsibility to do. I just don't think this government is fully following through on that commitment.
No, and you know, they talk the talk, but they haven't walked that walk. And we do need to do more in providing those supports and making sure people are getting the help that they deserve, as well as their families, who are the front line in dealing with the aftermath of operational stress injuries. So let's keep those programs moving forward and adjusting to the needs of today's veteran.
When you talk about today's veteran, those serving today, we just saw a few reports, and you're on the Defense Committee, obviously the critic. You've seen the numbers of how short the Canadian Armed Forces are in terms of recruitment. Why do you think that is, and what does the military need to do to get those numbers up that they are operational when called upon?
Well, the Liberals have completely demoralized our troops. They have essentially made those that serve feel like they're unwanted. They have not taken the time and effort to go out there and aggressively recruit and bring people back in. We have to remind everyone that being a member of the Canadian Armed Forces is an incredibly honorable career path to take. You're going to do some amazing things. You know, there is the 3 different divisions of the armed forces that you can serve in. And, well, if you count special operation forces, essentially there's 4, with infantry, special ops, Navy, and Air Force. And you know, but we've got a government here that has gone completely woke. That they have now pushed that down onto the recruitment component of the armed forces, and so we're not getting enough people signed up, and that is disturbing, because that impacts our ability to operate as an armed forces. It's impacting our ability to deal with the crises that come from here at home. And so, you know, General Eyre, the Chief of the Defense Staff, has said they're down about 10,000 operators right now. According to former Chief of Defense Staff General Hillier, he's hearing that number is more like 45,000 is all we have as deployable personnel. That doesn't put us in a place where we can send out a battle group, never mind a division, to go and help our allies. If we are needed in Eastern Europe to deal with Russia's aggression in Ukraine, or if, you know, God forbid, Russia even pushes it farther and invades one of our NATO allies, and then Article 5 is in effect and we have to deploy. Never mind our ability to project our strength in the Arctic. So the Liberals have done a terrible job at procuring, but at this point in time, we don't even have enough pilots to put in the old, rusted out F-18s they bought from Australia. Never mind buying new F-35s, which they still haven't signed the deal on, or putting new Navy ships, surface combatants out in the sea, or deploying troops across Canada to deal with natural disaster, as we witnessed that it was a big effort to get enough troops into Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, to deal with the aftermath of Hurricane Fiona.
I remember running in the 2015 election and getting hit on both sides, the NDP and the Liberals, talking about the replacement of the F-18s. They're bringing in, we wanted to bring in, of course, Harper government wanted to bring in the F-35s, and the Liberals and NDP wanted nothing to do with that. We wasted about 6 or 7 years when these planes could have been at least in our possession or being trained upon. All that time's lost, and we bought, like you said, these older planes from Australia, and really, when you're talking about bringing our military up to battle-ready status, or even the ability to deploy if they're needed in a disaster, it's gone downhill under this government. And of course, the 1990s is famously or infamously known as a decade of darkness. It's like the cycles are repeating itself here.
Yeah, and it even goes back further than Decade of Darkness, because Decade of Darkness was terrible and the military was dramatically underfunded. It's underfunded to this day, despite the goal of this government. They talk the talk that they're going to increase military spending, and it's going to be up above 1.34% of GDP. That there's money in the books. Well, guess what? They're $3 billion short this year on what they were supposed to spend on new equipment. The last 5 years before that, they were spending $2 billion a year less than what they should have been. So we have all this lapsed funding that's now over $15 billion that they say they spent, but they never did spend. That means that there isn't equipment out there. That means that we aren't hiring up and recruiting new soldiers, seamen, sailors, and air crew. We can't put planes in the air. We can't put ships to sea. We can't deploy forces as required. And that is demoralizing for those that serve, because you sign up because you want to deploy. You want to go out there and do amazing things and be part of the camaraderie and fellowship that comes with being a member of the Canadian Armed Forces. And instead, you don't have enough people there to train. They don't have that experience level anymore because they're leaving in droves. So there is a need to change how the government manages Canadian Armed Forces. That means we have to change out who the government is. And so I'd say that as a Conservative government that we will respect and honor those that serve, and we'll get the kit bought a lot quicker by breaking down some of those barriers on how we go about procuring. We'll get rid of the gatekeepers, and that starts with a lot of the rules and regulations that have been adopted by Treasury Board and Procurement Canada, Public Services. So there needs to be a way to get things bought, especially now that it's impacting not only our ability to deal with a much more dangerous world, as we witnessed Putin and his war machine in Ukraine, but also the threats coming from the communist regime in Beijing about invading neighboring Taiwan. We have to be on a war footing, and we're anything but, because the Liberals have been lethargic and they've allowed our armed forces to atrophy.
The military really is an organization that, like everybody else, has to compete for the bodies, right? They have to compete with the private sector. They have to compete with different agencies within the public sector to get the bodies they need. And one of the attractions, as you pointed out earlier, would be the honor of serving and being able to deploy and help others when they're in a time of need. We also have the piece of being trained and working on the latest equipment, which we are severely lacking, as you just pointed out. This is a problem that has building for years and years and years under this Liberal rule. They're not giving that incentive piece to, hey, we have the latest equipment here. We're going to train you on that. We're going to provide a career for you here. Right now, it doesn't seem to have that piece to it, and that piece seems to be missing, unfortunately.
And it has really impacted, people that have been new recruits that they've got in. They've had to wait months to get into basic training because there's just nobody there to help train them up. You're missing that middle management, those veterans that have served in Afghanistan, that are the master corporals and the sergeants and sergeant majors that walk into basic training and training up, and petty officers and warrant officers, and so when you don't have that skill set, then people are waiting because there's only so many out there that are able to do that training. And then after you get through basic, then you're starting to go down your career path, and you've decided what specialization that you want to have and get trained in it. And I hear that some people are sitting around 18 months to 24 months before they even get onto course. That is what's undermining morale. That is what's holding people back from their career goals and aspirations. And that's why we have to really invest heavily into the recruitment piece so we can get operators, get them trained up, get them so they're in a position to deploy and do the hard work but honorable job of being a member of the Canadian Armed Forces.
Another piece of this that's been in the national media recently is Arctic sovereignty. I know that's something you're very passionate about. But when we're talking about getting the numbers up in the recruitment phase, getting the proper equipment, we don't really have either functioning properly because of this Liberal government that could actually protect our Arctic, or at least have our stake in it, because we know there are other countries that are very interested in that piece of land.
Yeah, we're doing the study right now actually at the National Defense Committee on our Arctic sovereignty and Arctic defense. And the United States expects us to take care of our backyard. The Arctic is, for the most part, Canada's backyard. And certainly we got, the Danes with Greenland, and we got the Americans in Alaska. But we have our responsibility to continental security. So when we talk Arctic security, we're talking about continental security. And, it's been a long-standing relationship that the Americans expect us to protect the northern approaches, and they'll worry about, everything else. When we have a North Warning System that's becoming obsolete very quickly here, and lack of investment at this point in time into making sure that we have new radar systems installed that are over-the-horizon radar systems, that we have low Earth orbit satellites that can monitor 24/7 eyes on every square inch of the Arctic, updating and expanding our radar sat constellation, deploying unmanned vehicles, whether it's below ice or above ice. We have to have that technology, and Canada should be leading on it, but right now we seem to have this laissez-faire approach. And we're still 10 years out from those investments happening and being operational. We don't have 10 years if you look at the world around us and the threats that we're facing in the Arctic. The People's Liberation Army Navy from China has more icebreakers now than Canada and the United States combined. And they're not even an Arctic nation. They're near Arctic, but they're not an Arctic nation. And they have, as part of their Belt and Road Initiative, the Polar Silk Road. And so they have an interest in resource development and economic activity in the Arctic. And Canada needs to make sure that we're exercising our sovereignty over the Arctic, including all the archipelagos, as well as the Northwest Passage, which unfortunately our adversaries see as international water.
So it takes military equipment is something in this country we have done well for a while. If we need this equipment now, I don't trust this government to be able to get what we need in time for, just to keep up with the playing field here. It just doesn't seem possible.
We're going to have some priorities and what's important, and make sure those investments happen first. That's the thing that Pierre Poilievre, I know, as our leader, is looking at. And how can we procure a lot faster? How much more can we buy off the shelf rather than Canadianizing every piece of kit that we use? And at the same time still support industries that we have here, but where we don't, then how do we go to the open market and get what we need so that our troops have all the equipment to go along with the skills that they're going to develop in the Canadian Armed Forces.
All right, perfect. Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
Anytime.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. As
Thanks,
you know,
Jamie.
I always give the guests the last word, so if there's anything you want to say, this being the week of Remembrance Week, Remembrance Day on Friday, the floor is yours.
I'll just say this, that for all those that have served and those that are currently serving and those who will serve in the future, thank you for keeping Canada the true north, strong, free. Thank you for going out there and standing with our allies and protecting those that can't protect themselves. You know, all too often we take for granted our armed forces not realizing that they are standing on the wall 24/7. You know, and the NORAD mission is that they got, you know, they have the watch 24/7. And our Navy's always ready to sail and to engage any threats that are coming our way. We can never just take them for granted because we exist as a nation, because they are there to defend us.
James Bezan, Member of Parliament for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman, in the beautiful province of Manitoba. Also the defense critic, we appreciate his time. We appreciate your time as well. Please remember, new content every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Please like, comment, subscribe, share this program, and of course, download it and listen to it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, you know, name it. It is out there. Tell 2 friends about it because they want beer. Probably have to be Prime Minister just as much as we do.
Hear, hear.
Until next week. We say low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint.